Okay, people, so it definitely seems as though this arc is wrapping up. I'm not sure how much more there is to go. At the very least, it looks as though the aspects of the Shigaraki war, or the war against Shigaraki with all the heroes, it seems as though that's coming to a close with the ending of this chapter. There's still some lingering things. There's still the whole fact of Gigantomachia, but boy, the stuff that happened in the Vestige in this chapter with Nana, All for One's brother, All for One, Shigaraki, and Deku kind of just helpless there staring at everything was very interesting to say the least, and also raises a lot of things to think about, and also kind of switches the narrative in certain regards, at the very least from the perspective of the villains, and in particular Shigaraki. So a lot to dive into. All for One, so nasty at the mouth, a nasty man. The level of disrespect, like, I'm just looking at All for One like, you a dirty motherfucker, you a dirty motherfucker. But I like one big and major aspect regarding the way Shigaraki has been handling things, and again, the way things are in terms of that trope, you could argue, whatever, regarding the relationship between All for One and Shigaraki. Shigaraki, despite everything, still is holding on to his evil and fucked up convictions. So again, a lot to dive into. Without further ado, people, let's talk some of that My Hero Academia greatness. Boy, I'm gonna miss this arc. When all is said and done, this might go down as the best arc of this entire story so far. Let's do it, people.
Say we gonna do what we do, no matter how you move, make your move. That's how it be, though.
So one of the things I want to jump into before we go beat by beat with the chapter is the fact that one of the things that you could look at this, right, in terms of the way things are done with All for One and Shigaraki's relationships, the dynamic of it, and all of that jazz, is the fact that if you was to compare it, right, just for a frame of reference, like with Naruto, with Madara taking over, or Kaguya taking over Madara in that regard, one of the differences that I really appreciate and like is the fact that Shigaraki is kind of already on to this. It's not like where All for One has just been lingering in the back and at the last second just tried to jump and take complete control. Shigaraki is kind of cognizant to a certain level of what's going on, and is also fighting for, like, no, this is my spotlight, my story, and I even hate you, like, I hate everyone, and it's recognized by All for One in this chapter. It's you know, not just a secret situation. No, it's full-blown, like, Shigaraki doesn't like him, hates him, and All for One, despite the fact that Shigaraki is rejecting it and all that, I don't completely put in there that, oh, All for One is like, okay, like, no, I still think that All for One has in his mind at some given point, he's going to take control of this. Like, there's references there from the little brother of certain things that he said and whatnot, that All for One still has that in mind, but I like that Shigaraki isn't blind about it. He's not just like, oh, my master would never. No, he hates that motherfucker too, and it's his show, his story. So really big props to Shigaraki in this chapter, despite everything and the insanity of it. Because the chapter starts off when the last one left off with Nana looking at All for One and saying, God damn, motherfucker, even in my death, you still haunting me in my death. I still gotta face your ugly ass. Like, what's going on here, fam? Mind you, Deku is still the hero that he is, even despite everything that's going on in the Vestige world, and, you know, this world at the end, the One for All world. At the moment, he's still thinking about, like, damn, I wonder what's going on with Bakugo and them right now, which, again, that's part of his character. He's a hero. He's a hero through and through. But the level of disrespect, and just, it makes you want to hate All for One that much more, despite the fact that I have admiration of, in terms of him being a villain and just being a nasty motherfucker, because he is just at the mouth like a animal when he's like, oh, look, another dead person that I took care of. Like, what the hell is yo pathetic? Like, I'm just like, one thing after another, All for One keeps talking shit in this very intense situation. Like, he ain't backing down at it at all. And also, I still think that that's a little bit of coercion. Still the fact that he wants to make sure he keeps Tomura on that line, which there were certain aspects I was a little bit confused regarding certain informations, but it shows that All for One is, like, still trying to steer this as much as he possibly can. He's probably not strong enough right now to take total control over, But yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. Because when All For One says, like, hey, your pathetic grandmother talking to Tomura and stuff, I thought he would have more so tried to not necessarily hide that, because I believe it was already showcased that Tomura knew that that was his grandmother and all that stuff at some given point. It seems as though like there were hidden memories essentially within Tomura, so I was kind of caught off guard when he was referring like, yo, that's your grandmother, because again, I thought he would have want to like more so hide that and kind of negate that whole situation from happening in terms of like Tomura recognizing, oh shit, that's my grandma, because then, you know, there's possibility of Tomura still going the other way. Like in All For One's mind, he doesn't know, even though he wants it to be, he doesn't know for certain that Tomura is going to completely follow him through to the end in terms of his evil conviction. Then we get some pretty vital information regarding a transplant, so to speak, because All For One's like, yo, we're in the middle of a transplant, and he starts giving us details that at some given point when he was stealing quirks, the quirk holders that he would rob these quirks from, they would come and haunt them in his dreams. They would essentially keep on after him, hailing abuse his way, so to speak, as what he said, and it kind of confirms something and also makes sense as to what's been going on with One For All this time. Like, mind you, because people, I remember when Deku started noticing that there's more quirks, and when that whole big reveal came out that is not only just the strength quirk, that is actually a stockpile and stuff like that, people were calling BS or whatever. They were saying, oh, this is stupid or whatever, but you gotta think for a second. Deku is the only one outside of All For One, and now of course Tomura, that has actually experienced getting multiple quirks and quirks from different people, right? Like it's not something that has been common. So in terms of the reveal that we get, or the clarification we get in this chapter, that it's consciousness that is also coming along with it, and that's why when he would drop some of those quirks, the nightmares and these people coming to him in his dreams would stop. So essentially it's kind of showcasing that there is more to a quirk than meets the eye. It's not only the power, but there's a certain level of consciousness in it, which I find it fascinating. The fact that we're talking about transplanting consciousness, this is a whole other discussion outside of My Hero Academia, but I don't know, I thought that was brilliant, and it also again gives a little more into, well, what is it, how the hell is One For All the, you know, predecessors inside of Deku's mind, or this Vestige world, how is that happening? It's because each quirk also holds a certain level of the quirk holder's consciousness, and I find that fascinating again. And I guess shout outs to Dr. Maruta Shiga, because of course he's the genius that discovered all that. Like, I wonder how much more that doctor really knows. If you think about everything he's been capable of doing thus far, powering Shigaraki up to another planet, everything he's done for All For One all these years, like, that dude is a genius, a disgusting pig of an animal, but a genius. And then we start getting a little bit more of Shigaraki thinking back, because he gets a little flashback and he's thinking back, and it was Shigaraki as a child, and he's looking at a picture, and at that point he's like, oh, grandma, because remember, there was a lot of withheld memories or compressed memories within Shigaraki for the longest time, that he didn't really remember a lot of these things, of him looking back and seeing a picture of his grandmother and her being the hero Nana, because remember, that was one of the problems with the relationship with his father, the fact that his father was disgruntled with his mom Nana abandoning him, right? Like, that was something that kind of carried along, and then the abuse and the trauma led into him traumatizing his son. So it's a very, very chaotic, I guess you could say, mess of emotions and thoughts that I could imagine goes through Shigaraki's mind. Again, thinking back to those memories, it's like, yeah, I'm proud and I wanted to be a hero at some given point, but my father traumatized me about heroes to begin with everything he put me through, and then what I eventually did to him. And notice when he says, why were you, he's about to ask Nana a question, All For One once again interrupts, because All For One is still subliminally and subtly, shall I say, trying to control the narrative. He wants to make sure that there's no reverting back for Shigaraki, so he even interrupts him at that given point when he's trying to ask a question, because then notice after that Shigaraki isn't asking any more questions. Later on he just starts going in. So just pay attention to how All For One manipulates the situation in this chapter, and how he's constantly just being the verbal one in order to control where things move. And then it just gives a little more clarification when All For One is like my little bro, when he mixed his stockpiling quirk with his original quirk. That's how he was able to transfer consciousness through generations. So essentially, even the two predecessors that we really didn't get to know yet of One For All that are inside of Deku and whatnot, their consciousness is in there too. I'm curious as to why he doesn't have access to them though. What's up with that? And again, if one of them, the fourth one, is like an evil person or something bad, going back to, you know, that discussion that All Might had with Bakugo and whatnot, there's probably some evil consciousness essentially going to be like a devil on Deku's shoulder at some given point, like a classic trope, but again, the way My Hero does things, it'll probably go a different direction. And I ain't gonna lie, I love it. I really, really love it because of Shigaraki's character when Nana's like, oh, Kotaro's son, you know, talking about her sons, obviously, you know, talking about, this is my grandson, you're Kotaro's son. And Shigaraki's response was brilliantly evil. Just like, I just imagine the scene of like, hey grandson, you want some cookies? No, fuck off, because his response was priceless. Because he says, no matter how we got here, grandma, rest assured I also hate you with all my heart. And I am just like, oh my god, how can you not fanboy over this evil bastard? Like, in terms of the way he's going, like, he's again the same model used for a shonen protagonist has been used for this villain. We've gotten to him, seeing him at his weakest and most, you know, fimble, and seeing where he's at now, and then seeing him even telling his grandmother like, no bitch, I hate you too. I'm just like, that's our evil bastard right there, that guy. Although I throw the argument there that there's still the conflicting nature of Shigaraki, because after that exchange, he starts all of a sudden, like, you know, the anger and the hatred starts like destroying some of the One for All world. Like, things is just getting real chaotic. And I'd argue that, again, that's the conflict within Shigaraki, the fact that he hates her because he just has this massive rage, but maybe somewhere within there, it's what's activating that rage is the fact that he feels bad that this isn't the route that somewhere in Shigaraki's mind that he wanted to take. We got to keep on going back to, he wanted to be a hero when he was younger. This isn't exactly how he planned things or how he wanted things. So I think that that's where the giant rage and the destroying of the One for All world is coming from, that he's conflicted. Because the rule of One for All is the fact that only Deku can really have any type of change within this world, and he's breaking that rule. Like, again, this guy is a monster, and just amazing of that. His hatred is so freaking strong that even the world, with this rule of he has no say-so in this world, he breaks the fucking rule. Literally, he's so strong, he decays rules. And here's where, again, the dynamics of their relationship that I really, really appreciate, that it's less like, again, I'm gonna swoop in and steal the show, Kaguya to Madara, and more so like a Orochimaru trying to get to Sasuke type of scenario, in terms of the fact that Shigaraki recognizes and hates him too. All for one, even at one given point, he has to say like, oops, forgot for a second, you hate me too, which again, that changes the dynamic, and it doesn't just make it like if Shigaraki is just this, you know, idiot or unsuspecting victim, although All for One still, I'm sure, has plans. Like, you don't have all this going for you for hundreds of years just to get some random kid and you know, kind of give him all and entrust everything to him. Although there is the argument there, because if you look at the little brother, right, and we see him more in this chapter, and we're gonna get into it in a bit, but you see his character design, who knows, these people are, I'd imagine All for One is like hundreds of years old at this point, right? Like, for all we know, Shigaraki and Nana and all them comes from a bloodline that goes back to All for One's little brother. You see a lot of the regret that All for One has is the fact that he couldn't get his little brother to comply. He couldn't get his little brother to go along with the bullshit and the fuckery that he was up to back in the day. I could see, to a certain degree, if he really has this weird love for his little brother and anger that his little brother wouldn't listen to him, that maybe he could have a similar type of thing of like, no, I do want to entrust to a certain degree to Tomura. Or it could be that, well, I couldn't get it from my little brother. Tomura is the current version and the next in bloodline of my little brother. I'm gonna take him then. So there's kind of a back and forth on what All for One exactly wants from Tomura. Does he want to entrust him with everything like the little brother that he never could get to listen, or does he want to take over him like the little brother that wouldn't listen? Because even All for One's little brother asks, like, so is he next in line? And I'm imagining what he meant by that is taking control of his body. Like, for all we know, this could be not the original form of All for One. Like, we've never seen his actual face in flashbacks. It's always been shouted out. So for all we know, he's been taking control of bodies this whole time, and then kind of has maybe some quirk to morph it to look similar to the features that he had, or whatever the case may be. It could be that that's why he was referring to like, oh, is he next in line in terms of the next person you're going to take over? And that even gets more so pushed forward when All for One says, it's a shame I could never make you mine, which kind of sounds a little weird. Like, I'm trying to make Shorty mine. Like, you're talking about your little brother, fam. Relax. But I'm imagining he means taking control of his body. Maybe he wanted to use him as a vessel to continue. And again, his little brother, that's one of the things that hurt him back in the day, is that his little brother said no and eventually faced off against him. And even now, the little brother still shuts him down and says, we will never go with you. We're staying here with this little weakling guy that you think is so freaking weak. Because All for One, again, he just talking so much shit, from talking shit to Nana, talking shit to his little bro, kind of halfway being passive with Shigaraki. And then even in the chapter, he goes in and he's like, this weak piece of shit, this kid is nothing. Like, what do you see in him? Why are y'all so hype about him? You know, you're bullshitting. You know he ain't shit. Stop it. And I'm wondering if All For One had any type of strategy in terms of trying to steal Tomura right now, when he says, mix your powers with me, Tomura. We could steal these people away. I already beat them. They're dead people anyway. So who knows? Again, there's still a certain amount of mystery with All For One's motives, and I know I've said that throughout this video or whatnot, but it definitely feels as though it's something to do with either completely taking over Tomura's body, or, again, less likely at this point now that I think more and more about it, like, he's too evil, he's had too many plans for too many years. It's probably, again, that he's looking at Shigaraki, whether Shigaraki is, again, the current bloodline of his little brother. I mean, if you look at the character designs, they look very, very similar. So, again, it's probably leaning on that. And throughout this Vestige thing, maybe he attempted and thought for a second he could do it. But again, his powers, as he said later on in the chapter, haven't really settled in yet. So maybe he wasn't settled in enough, and Shigaraki at this point wasn't ready for the taking. Then we get a speech from the little bro saying about regarding Deku's rage, that he rages on further, kind of clarifying that no, he is truly the hero that we need at this moment, and again, kind of clarifying why he rocks with him and all of that stuff. And we got a panel where Shigaraki and Deku separate, so seemingly this whole exchange with Nana, All For One, and everything is probably over with at this point, which again, with how beat up Tomura is, and we get clarification on that as well later on in the chapter, it seems as though this is probably going to be the end of Shigaraki's war. All it takes is another chapter or two for Gigantomachia and the League, well, in particular Gigantomachia, to show up, grab Tomura, and bounce out of there with him. So I'm imagining, again, this could very well be the closing off of this saga of Shigaraki's war, which it's been one hell of a ride. And if this is really like the end of this part of this, you know, story or whatnot, it went out with a crazy swing. Because when they separated, I believe Deku says he couldn't steal it, so he still wasn't capable, and even All For One at some given point says in the chapter that his powers hadn't settled in yet enough so that Tomura could steal the quirk. So basically, Tomura wasn't strong enough. Had he been 100%, I think the heroes were just barely able to stop a catastrophe, because had Shigaraki been at 100% when all this happened, he would have steal that quirk. They wouldn't have been able to do shit against him. They lucked out with it being, what was it, 74, 75% done, because that's why the powers hadn't settled in yet. And I'm imagining if the doctor makes it out of this, he could very well help him to get that last 25%, or there's probably other methods to get that last 25%, so he could truly be just something otherworldly that we're going to need a time skip and massive training in order to put down. And kind of clarifying that this is probably going to be the end of the Shigi exchange once Gigantomachia shows up, is that All For One tells Tomura, don't pass out, retreat to fight another day, basically saying, yo, it's time to retreat. Like, and All For One, I'm imagining that's how he's been able to survive all these years, even with some of the battles that he had back in the day with All Might, is again retreating. You got your ass kicked, like, okay, you go and come back stronger, which again, it's using some of the same concepts that we use on the hero side, and that's what really makes it interesting. It makes, I think, the villains more so that you don't want to completely hate them despite their completely hateable pieces of shit like Tomura, because like there's those things where like you feel as though you grew with that villain. And I love how after the exchange and you see Deku there all beat up, Tomura all beat up, Deku's thinking to himself, god damn it, motherfucker, please don't get up again, don't move anymore, I've had enough, I can't do it anymore. So you can definitely see that if Tomura makes another move, let's just say he's able to regenerate, which I don't think that's going to happen at this point. His regenerative powers were already a little messy, and then after this exchange, I think he's completely wiped out. Tomura probably could kill everyone at this point if he goes back 100%. Like, there's no way in hell. I think that this is leading up to a moment of Gigantomachia grabbing him before he could be completely apprehended and dragged away by Endeavor and them. Then the end of the chapter switches off to Dabi yet again, and I love how the moment Dabi starts talking, he starts talking about Endeavor. Hello, Toya, are you there, fam? He's like, oh, great, Shigaraki's fighting Endeavor. We could start our plan to destroy this fake society. So it's looking like at best, if we're going to get the big Dabi reveal that all of us expect of him being Toya, the supposed dead son of Endeavor, it would very well be great for it to happen here soon. If this arc is about to wrap up, I would love, I don't know if necessarily a battle, because Endeavor is so worn out. What is he really going to do against Dabi? Like, Dabi is seemingly completely good and ready to go. Endeavor is so fucked up that probably Shigaraki could order all of them back at this point, like gets Giganto and says, yo, no, I don't care if you're ready, let's go. And maybe there'll be a small face-up prior to that of Dabi and Endeavor, and Dabi giving the reveal like, oh, hey, Dad, you a pussy, and then bounces. I think one of the more interesting things regarding the villains, aside from Shigaraki, because that's hands down best thing right now, is Toga, because I could very well see Toga at some given point flipping. Because right now she's emotionally distraught. Right now probably her anger and rage towards the hero is at a crazy level because she lost twice, and she even starts questioning in this one right now when she's talking to one of the other villains. She's like, yo, y'all supposed to be protecting people. Was he not a person? Will they kill me? So there's a certain level there and a certain balance that Toga could either go one extreme or the other. She could go really extreme and say, I'm going to kill all of them, or she could find greater purpose, because in particular, the chapter ends off with basically she wants to seek out Uraraka and Deku and ask them certain questions, and based on their response will be how she feels in the end and which way she will go. Like right now, she could bug the hell out. She could go crazy. But there also could be the underlining thing of she blames Shigaraki for taking her down this route. Had she not followed Shigaraki, had she not gone down this dark route, Twice would still be alive. Maybe she could have convinced Twice to go along with her and go more so on the hero side. So again, she could turn into a monster. She could go crazy, or she could very well blame this darkness on what happened and end up being an ally, which I don't know. It's so extreme right now, her emotions, that who knows how it's gonna go. I'm leaning more so towards she's so distraught that she could potentially try to kill one of them, maybe pierce through one of them or some crazy shit before all is said and done. But it was a very also interesting way to end the chapter. Like, we had this giant climax with the Vestige, Nana, all this shit, and then it ends on like Toga. There's probably something huge that is about to happen for Horikoshi to transition to that to wrap up the chapter. And with all that being said, very insane and intense chapter. Again, one of the biggest thing that strikes to me is that this is about to end in terms of this arc, whether we're going into a time skip, whether we're going to go into a rest up and prepare and then go back. Whatever's about to happen, I see as though it's almost done. We got some of the other villains from, you know, the League of Villains and whatnot that gotta wrap up some unresolved things for now, like Toga and Dabi. But in terms of like the big crux of it all with Shigaraki's war and shit like that, it seems as though that's coming to a close at this particular point. And yeah, curious what you guys thought about this chapter. All for One, what is his freaking motives? Does he just wants to completely take control of Tomura, despite the fact that, again, Tomura is cognizant of like, I run this shit, you don't take over shit. Your thoughts on the consciousness transfers, what's happening, why those two predecessors of One for All aren't there right now? Why can't Deku access that consciousness? Is it because it's like a darker version and like the other ones are so light and they just don't want to talk to him because they're evil fucks? Or what's your thoughts on that? Where do you think this is all going to go? Where do you think Toga's pendulum is going to swing in terms of her anger and hatred right now? Like, she could very well turn that anger and hatred against the same people that kind of dragged her through this situation with the villains. And your overall thoughts and expectations with the My Hero Academia manga with chapter 288 and beyond. Shit is, man, this has been a crazy war. This has been awesome, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how it all wraps up. So after this one though, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Hit that bell to get all notifications. And if you want to follow any of my other social media, links are in the description below. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. And remember the golden rule: anime and manga for life. Bye. Have an awesome day. Peace in, and man, My Hero Academia, if this war is coming to a close, it has been one fucking crazy ride, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Toga's resolve is going to be and how Shigaraki is going to get out of there. I'm imagining again Gigantomachia. Let's do it, baby.
It's nights like this, and times like this, what's that I can give another hit, but I've got this inside a switch, a natural bliss, but